So I want to talk about how you can negotiate for a salary at work that you deserve. I think everybody deserves a very good salary in a wage. And I think that they should do fantastic in their career. I am a business professor. I want to tell you a story at the beginning. And then hopefully at the end of it, once you listen to the story, I'll give you some ideas in terms of how you can negotiate for a salary that is actually going to improve yourself and hopefully improve the business as well. I think that those two things are really, really important. I always think about that. And I'm going to give you some thoughts. So, negotiation. The sort of central idea of a negotiation is that you try to extract as much out of an exchange as much as possible. That's what people believe. But I want you to listen to the story. So, a good friend of mine was going up. They hadn't gotten a salary increase for a very, very long time. And they were all nervous. And, like you and me, it's nerve-wracking to do that kind of stuff. It's very confrontational. I do not like confrontation at all. It makes me feel yucky, right? And I think it makes most people feel yucky. I think you probably feel the same way. This person was psyching themselves up for days, in fact, months. They were terrified of doing this. And yet they were, really good employee. They were pretty outstanding. And they were psyching themselves out and they sort of didn't want to do it. And eventually they got up the nerve to go and have this meeting. And so they set up this meeting and they got into it and they found out, first of all, nobody even knew, what they were supposed to do in this situation. And then it was just kind of like, and of course. So, all of this fear and anxiety that was built up inside and all of the stress was not really even an issue. It wasn't even something that should be considered. And yet it was a sort of high stress situation for, this friend of mine, but it wasn't even really an issue at the end of the day because they already were a really good, outstanding employee, which I think most of you that are listening to this actually are, right? I think most people that is diligent that would listen to a podcast or listen to a message about this, they ultimately are a really good, conscientious person, right? It's the people I'm more worried about the people that don't even consider it and it's outside of their wheelhouse. So, what's the lesson to learn from this particular story? The lesson is that in a lot of exchanges that we have in negotiations, we often think that there is I need to extract something out of this relationship. And what we don't remember and we forget often is that it's often very much it's a two-way street often, right? Unless you have a really poor boss. And there is a lot of poor bosses, right? Like there's probably 40 or 50% of the bosses out there are not really that great, right? Like they try to steal and cheat and, just do all that kind of stuff. But if you have a decent boss, in those particular individuals, you might have to be aggressive, but you probably don't want to be around them anyways. So in most situations, it's going to be recognized. What you're doing is actually recognized anyways. And what you'll notice is that it's not necessarily even an issue often. If you're providing value and you're consistently doing this, right? It's a difference. There is a lot of contingency things that go on. So what do I mean by contingency? It really depends on the context of what you're actually in. right? So if you're at the beginning of your career and you're just starting out, negotiation makes not really that much sense. If you are going into a career right at the beginning, negotiating, like if it's your first position, it makes sense to negotiate relatively strongly. But once you're in the position, your performance should speak for itself. If you're in a good organization, that is very contingent. I understand that. There is a lot that goes on to good organization, but if you're doing good work, you often get recognized and people understand that. Um, the biggest thing that you can do to increase your salary, it's not negotiation, right? Like that creates a lot of tension, creates a lot of stress for you, but it's simply just doing a great job repeatedly, making a name for yourself, and then looking for opportunities that may come your way, right? So that means looking outside of your organization often to find opportunities that come your way. And if you look at that, repeatedly, you'll notice that you'll gain a lot more from this kind of way of dealing with it than worrying about all of the negotiation. So, and this is where it's a two-way street. This is what I want you to understand. It's that sometimes the position that you're in, the organization that you're in, doesn't allow for much wiggle room with negotiation, right? I work for a state institution as a professor, and it's really well known. All of our salaries are public, all that kind of stuff. So we have to be accountable to, the state and all this kind of stuff. So there's very little negotiation that often happens in this kind of situation. Everybody knows what it is, right? What you're supposed to get. It's pretty standard in terms of what you get. There's and then, in a lot of positions, a lot of businesses that are run really well, right? Big corporations, very, very big corporations. Everybody knows what it should be. And what matters more, right? The salary, everybody knows what it should be. And they usually try to make it as fair and equitable as possible. Usually, not always, but usually. But what matters is actually performing really well repeatedly and making a name for yourself so that you become attractive and interesting to a large audience in a large group where people actually want you to go work for them. You get opportunities to go different places. All of these things are really important. When I started out with my career, for example, I thought, yeah, you can negotiate. You can't negotiate in my situation. It doesn't exist, right? And the way that people, at least in my career, in this sort of professor career, the way that they negotiate is they just go to different places. And then they build up their, more salary. But then there's an upper end to what you can actually do, right? It's quite high for business professors, that upper end, but there's an upper limit that you can actually do. So I want you to sort of think about that in your own career. What can you do to create value for a long time and not only create value, but to make it so that you are known, that you can get opportunities, that other people see that you are doing a good thing. And I'm not talking about being like flashy and icky, all of those kind of things, but really being a contributing person to a lot of different areas. And then as well, on the other side of this, and I talk a lot about not caring, right? To take a step back, to remove yourself from the situation. Look for those ways that you can do really well, but then at the same time, take a step back, right? Because that salary that you're really pining for, unless you're not really, so most of the people that are going to be listening to this channel are probably going to be fairly, doing okay. or they don't have any room for salary negotiation. But for those that, are really struggling, go look for other jobs. Go out there, look for other jobs. And if you don't find anything, take a step back and relax. Go through it and just continuously do this. Turn it into almost like a second job where you're just looking for other opportunities and doing well at the same time, but like not getting so wrapped up into it that you are anxious and scared all the time. So that's how you do it, right? Like that's how you actually, and you develop a great career by doing that because you're providing value to the company or organization, whatever you're doing. You're also recognizing your own value that you provide, right? And it's very much thinking about, and I'm not saying to be a pushover, I'm saying, you know, walk cautiously, carefully, and then really be open to the fact that it's an exchange. It doesn't have to feel greasy. It doesn't have to feel yucky. It doesn't have to be stressful. And in fact, it shouldn't. And if you think that you're not getting paid enough, it's likely because you're just in an organization that can't pay anymore. And they can't do anymore. And so you should just look for other things and be open to that. But then know that there may be challenges that you're going to face with that as well, right? It's difficult. There's search costs. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not as easy as what people think. And so you just take your time, walk slowly, have confidence, do good work repeatedly, and see what happens. I know it's a little bit less strategic what I'm suggesting. I understand that. But I think the sort of strategizing of things really gets to you and it makes you feel yucky in a lot of ways. And I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to feel confident and happy and doing good work all of the time. All right. So I gave you a quick story, what this was about, and then give you a bunch of different tips on how to manage having a better salary. Take care.